Night of the Hunter. For this feature, I haven't a huge amount to share. A tremendous film, so impeccably directed, shot, performed, edited. I have little to no negative to share about it. Save a belief in its overall narrative contrivance. The expressionistic flavour renders these proceedings to be transcendental and all encompassing, rather than a simple storybook exercise. Now, whilst another film starring Robert Mitchum, initially shot in black and white, was remade to some fanfare and commercial success, of course, I'm referring to Cape Fear and its rendition by Scorsese from 1992. No one would assume that a Night of the Hunter remake could be composed to even critical enthusiasm. The reasons why are the reasons why the great directors were and are the great directors. The Night of the Hunter is one of the most indicative old Hollywood films, and in that era there aren't a huge amount of American filmic auteurs at demonstrating the ins and outs of effective filmmaking beyond staging a basic script. How Huston's Maltese Falcon looks compared to how another might have handled the script, how John Frankenheimer's films look, how even the legendary, very old Alan Dwan had, both in the early 30s, obviously the silent era, it goes without saying, but we're more sound oriented in our discussion here, and in his late career renaissance of the 50s, the gallant Technicolor Swan songs, plus the dynamic Hegelian classic Most Dangerous Man Alive. Well, it is worth mentioning the silent era for a moment, because obviously Laughton's direction on this film, plus I guess Stanley Cortez's cinematography, inspired by how films of the silent era looked, and Dwan being a veteran of the silent era, this had something to do with, I feel, his pictures remaining aggressively filmic when he had the budget to do so, at least in the certainly in the early 30s, and then in the early sound era, and then in the later 50s when he was, particularly when in his films he collaborated with John Alton. But it's worth mentioning Most Dangerous Man Alive was in black and white and was, if anything, a silent era pioneer's take, a veteran's take on the B genre films of the late 50s, which were just being, churned out for nothing. But Dwayne actually managed to compose something very filmic and intense and visceral via a script that most would just churn out as and execute as an absolute nothing, forgettable picture. And some other great Hollywood directors were veterans of the silent era. We have to remember John Ford, Michael Curtiz, although his enthusiasm for sort of the American sound era, sort of 30s, cost effective, but very sort of punchy. Curtis didn't advance creatively in a way that someone like Ford had. Obviously, another veteran of the silent era, though a bit later, Hitchcock had. Even someone like King Vidor, he seemed to put out more interesting work throughout the sound era compared to Curtis after a point in the mid 50s, say. But anyway, no more improving here. Let's just go back to our script. The most instructive of all in how to take material and transforming it into a timeless masterpiece, compared with the examples I gave of Huston, Frankenheimer, or Dwan, is Laughton's Night of the Hunter. And of course, Laughton was not an experienced director either. Thank very experienced cinematographer and Wells collaborator Stanley Cortez for this film's cinematographic execution more than any other individual contributor. Not a film I will remotely want to knock down a peg, Night of the Hunter certainly deserves its place in American cinema textbooks, and perhaps a mention in the World Cinema Celebrations or collations as well. 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Cark It had this to say: based on a slim, stark novel by Davis Grubb, Charles Laughton's sole film as a director is a depression-set fable of psychosis and faith, strikingly sinister and deeply humane, yet deeply humane. Told mostly from the point of view of children, the story is like a fairy tale in its simplicity, yet seeps with adult complications. The trigger is a stash of money stolen by a hard-up bandit Ben Harper, Peter Graves, and entrusted to his children John, Billy Chapin, and Pearl, Sally Jane Bruce, which makes Ben's desperate widow Willa, Shelley Winters, an object of attraction for one of the screen's most unforgettable villains. Reverend Harry Powell, Robert Mitchum, in black and white clerical garb, with a Puritan flat hat that curls into a set of demonic-looking horns, is associated with the Bible and a switchblade, with the words love and hate tattooed on his knuckles. His sermon consists of an allegorical talk about these forces locked in conflict, illustrated as he arm wrestles with himself. Powell's wooing of Willa is high pressure, fooling the woman, who ends up serenely drowned, but not the children, who flee after the murder, the money stashed in the little girl's doll. Mitchum, usually associated with cynical heroes, here plays a sincerely committed villain, moonlighting as a serial killer of loose women but sexually obsessed with the money he feels he needs to fund his bloody crusade. The nocturnal escape down river, shot in expressionist monochrome, is a magical sequence of close-ups of strange-looking swampland flora and fauna. With evil/hate so powerfully conveyed, the Night of the Hunter needs an equally strong force to represent good/love. Laughton managed to get Silent Star, Lillian Gish, come out of semi-retirement to play Rachel, a kindly woman whose farm is open to the many underage runaways who come down the path. Like the snake in Eden, Powell threatens Rachel's ideal, working his seamy charm on one of the older girls to find a way onto the farm. In a remarkable siege finale, Mitchum's menacing drone of an edited hymn, Leanin', is joined and completed by Gish, who knows the full lyric, Lean on Jesus, and adds her voice to his, banishing his darkness orally before he is actually defeated.